folks. So the topic for today, is word processing, and it's nowhere near as exciting as fun as clips or GarageBand or movies. But a lot of us spend a lot of our time writing, and we often don't have a chance to learn how to use a word processor properly. I include myself. It took me a long time to get my head around some of the fundamentals. So I'm hoping to share this today. We asked a question a couple of weeks ago about who used styles, et cetera, and there are very few hands went up. So I'm going to go over some of the fundamentals today. Once again, please put any questions you have in the chat, and I'll refer to them afterwards. If we don't answer them during the course of the session, then we'll deal with them afterwards. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see a document addressed to Joe Blogs?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, perfect. Okay. I'm just going to mute you, Shelley, there. Okay, so I have a document here, which is a template document that we're going to be playing with during the course of the day. We're going to deal with four things fundamentally. We're going to deal with tabs, we're going to deal with margins, we're going to deal with styles. And once we combine all of those things together, you'll see some of the things that we can do when we have the sort of control over our documents that we would like to have. So the first thing that you really need to do is to show your ruler. Now, this is the same in Word, it's the same in Pages, it's the same in WordStar, it's the same in WordPerfect. I don't know what word processor are out there these days. And your rulers are typically the same. Just for your info, if you go to your preferences in Pages, you have the ability to change the ruler units, and the defaults are good. If you're used to inches, use inches. If you use centimeters, use centimeters. But you can adjust certain of the settings in rulers. I'm not going to dwell too much on them at the moment. So if I click in this paragraph, the first paragraph, and I drag my left margin, it affects the left margin and only the left margin. If I undo that and I click in the second margin, second paragraph, I drag that one, once again, it only affects that paragraph. Now, the reason for that is that everything that you do, whether it's a tab, whether it's a margin, whether it's a style that we're affecting, works on a paragraph level. And the way that paragraphs are differentiated from each other is by an invisible character. And if I choose show invisibles, you'll see this little guy here, which looks like a backwards P. This is your paragraph marker. And everything that you apply, whether it's a ruler, whether it's a tab, whether it's a style, will affect the entire paragraph. There are exceptions, but in the main, that's the first rule you've got to abide by. So if I was to select these two paragraphs and adjust them, my formatting applies to those two paragraphs. Similarly, I can adjust the right margin just by dragging, and I don't even have to have it selected. I think I can just be clicked inside there, and really everything that comes before that paragraph marker is honored. So I'm going to use this as the basis for a new document. I'm going to make a new document quickly, and we're going to start exploring some of the settings that we've got and how we can manage our document. Page thumbnails, don't want them document only, right? Okay, so I have it. I'm going to copy this first paragraph over here, and I'm going to paste it into this new document. Okay, let's turn off our invisibles for the moment. So one of the things I want to do is I want to be able to maybe adjust my indentation. So if we show the ruler, the margin that you select applies to every line with the exception of the first line. Now, if you look carefully at the left-hand margin over here, there's this little bar that sits on the top, and that's your indent. It's a little difficult to get hold of, but there you go. If I drag that in, the first paragraph is aligned. The first sentence in my first line in my paragraph has an indent. So if I hit return a couple of times, and this is some more text. I'm going to select this and copy and paste it because you don't want to spend a whole bunch of time watching me type. Can you see how, because I've applied this in my first paragraph, it's just going all the way through. Now let's turn on the invisibles once again. So until I make a change, if I do a new let's just take some of the text here. It just flows through. Everything stays the same until I change it. So if I do another paragraph now, and I pull that back, and I paste that in, see the first paragraph, the first line in my paragraph is now flush with the left-hand side. So what can I do with this? Sometimes I want to not have a hanging, have a normal indent. I might want to have a hanging indent, and I have a document over here which I can template. Just minimize here for a second. Over here, I have a document now where I've got the ability to have my left edge aligned, because what happens normally, right? We've got a document over here. I want to type 1. This is a paragraph. Let's just copy this and paste this over here. And if you look closely, the second and third line are aligned with the 1, but I don't want that. I want the 1s to be aligned, I want the A's to be aligned, and I want my paragraph to flow all the way down so that the second line is in the same place as the first line. So how we do that is we select our paragraph. Let me just get rid of the one over here at the moment. And I'm going to move my margin into the right. Okay, that's where I want my body of my copy to be. And then instead of taking that top bar and dragging it to the right, I can drag it to the left. That's known as a hanging indent, right? So if I click on the beginning of that line and type 1, and then hit a tab, my first line jumps to the first margin. So now I can format all the stuff that I'm doing. If I hit return, I can go to tab, new paragraph. And this carries on ad infinitum until I change that style. So now my documents are starting to look slightly more formatted, slightly better. So the next thing that allows us to get even more fine-grained control over our documents are tabs. Now, tabs go back to typewriters, and let me just open up my tabs template here. So I've got a document over here. I need to move you guys out of my way. There we go. So let's turn off the invisibles here. So I've got a nice bit of text up on screen. I'm writing something and I want everything to line up really nicely. Now, back in the days when we had a typewriter, it was very easy. You just hit space, 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 and everything lined up perfectly. But that was because a typewriter had what was called monospaced fonts. And a monospaced font means that the letters are all exactly the same size. So the letter I is the same size as a letter W. It takes exactly the same amount of screen space. So everything works perfectly. It's really easy because you've just got columns of text which are exactly the same size, irrespective of what the letter is. But the Macintosh, and with pure typography introduced into computing, the ability for letters to have different sizes. So, for example, the letter I takes up much less screen space than the letter W, so it should therefore, from a typographic perspective, look much nicer if the letters are closer and wider. So if I take this document, which is set up in Courier, which is a traditional typewriter font, which is monospaced, as I said, and I go to my fonts and I change it to something like brush script, we're in trouble. If I go to something like Avenir, once again, we're in trouble. And if we're the type of people who like to try and line things up by using spaces, we've lost, because if you want it to look nice and line up, you can't use spaces anymore. That's history. So what do? We use tabs. So by default, if you have no tabs set in your ruler, let me just go to the layout tabs. If you look down here, you've got a tabs area. So by default, it's about 1.27 centimeters. Well, it's exactly 1.27 centimeters, which I think is about ½ an inch. And if I hit the tab key, watch the insert bar over there. It's going to jump about 1.27 centimeters every time I hit the tab key. How can I differentiate between tabs and other things on the screen? Because the tabs and the spaces are all invisible characters that tell the computer how to display it, but we don't want to see it because it makes our document messy. So once again, I'm going to go Show Invisibles, and you'll see that where I had spaces, you've got these little blue dots, but where I've typed in a tab, oh, there's our paragraph markers once again, but where I've hit a tab, there's this little right arrow. Okay, so how does that help me? Let me delete some of the stuff and bring what was on the second page back up over here. So here I've got exactly the same text that you see above, but instead of being separated by spaces, they're separated by a tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in order to place a tab, there's a couple of ways I'm doing. The quickest and easiest is just to click. So I'm going to highlight these guys, is just to click on the screen where you want the tab. So I'm going to click on over here. And can you see that vertical line? I'm going to drag that line. There's my first tab. The second tab, I want to be, let's say, round about here. I'm going to click over there. And do you see how everything has jumped to the tab? It's only affecting the lines 2, 3, and 4, because they're the ones I've got selected at the moment. Now, once again, I'm going to click over here. And can you see how this jumps? Right? Irrespective of the space before it or afterwards, everything's lined up really nicely. And, oh, sorry, undo. I'm just going to select these 3 guys again, and one more tab. So now these guys are really nicely lined up, but there's a slight problem. Let me just set tabs for my headers over here as well. There's my description, there's my amount, and there's my price. Okay. So there is a slight problem over here, in as much as these things are lining up over here. On the left-hand side, they're not necessarily lining up around the decimal point where I'd like them to line up. Now, there are 4 types of tabs. There's a left tab, a center tab, a right tab, and a decimal tab. And the way we get a tab to change between the two is we select the tab and we just click on it again. So I'm going to take this third one over here. Let me highlight these guys. I'm going to click on this one, and you'll see, double click on it, I beg your pardon. No, it's just, let's go back. So there's my first tab. I'm going to double click on it. And do you see how it changes to a star, like a diamond? That's now a middle tab. And if I drag it, you can see that yellow line. Everything is aligned around the center. I'm going to double click again. Now everything is lined around the left edge. That's a little bit better, but if I had more numbers around the end there, my numbers would go off. And for this, I don't want that. I want a decimal tab. So if I select these guys and double click one more time, I now have a decimal tab, and the tab will align around the decimal point. And if you look down here, you can see what the decimal character is. So if you're used to using commas for decimals, you can just change it to a comma and it'll all be good. So this is how we get our stuff lined up really nicely. And if I hide the invisibles, our document's starting to look a little bit better, and I can adjust my typeface. Let's make this, let's take brush script. everything stays aligned. Let's make it Avenir. Everything stays aligned because it's aligned around the tabs. Does that make sense? Yeah. So tabs, your left margin and your right margin, are the fundamentals of laying things out properly. Now, if you had to do that every single time, again, that would be a bit of a pain. So we have something called styles, which allows us to save these settings and then apply them willy-nilly. But the best part of it is if we want to change the way it looks, we don't change the document, we change the style. Let me demonstrate that to you. So I'm going to make a brand new empty document. And this is our styles palette, just up here in the top right-hand corner in our format. And this works on Word. This works on, in fact, Word introduced styles somewhere around 1991, 92. It was brilliant. Word 5.1, absolutely fantastic. The last really good version of Word, in my humble opinion. So this is our styles palette. And if I click over here, you can see that this document has a bunch of predefined styles. Now, all of the templates that you get with Pages have their own predefined styles. So if I take a new one and I open up something like this project proposal and I click on the styles palette, you'll see it also has predefined styles, but they're completely different. You've got two different titles, subtitles, subheading, captions, labels, and so on. If I open up, there's a novel, there we go, edgy novel template. And once again, if I click on the styles, you'll see the styles are completely different once again. So how does that look? We've got a new document. If I choose title, this is my title. And these are styles designed by Apple, so there's a reasonably good chance that it's going to look quite nice. So I want to have a heading. So let's select heading, and let's call this introduction. Introduction. And you can see the style always changes in Pages back to a body style when you hit return. In Word, you can choose what the style, the next style is when you create a new style. So let me get some text from this document. Copy. Now, I'm just going to change this text to something different, just to demonstrate something. Let's make it Arial black. I'm going to copy that. Now, if I paste this into my document, you can see my body style over there is kind of a Helvetica style. If I just do a paste, it pastes it in exactly the way it was formatted in the original document. If, on the other hand, I do a paste and match style, it inherits the style of my document that I'm creating. And it's not paste and match style for nothing. So I'm going to get another couple of bits of text here. Oh, sorry, choose paste and match style. And one more. And paste and match style. Now I'm going to make a few changes to this document. Can you see this is a traditional body style? There's nothing unusual with it here. It's just body style. So I'm going to select this paragraph, show my ruler, and I'm going to do a regular indent. Nothing's changed here, exactly the same way I had before. It's only applying the paragraph that I've selected. But if you look at the body over here, you see it's got this little asterisk, which is telling me that I've made a modification to that style. Now I have some choices that I can make. If I click on this once again and go back down to body, you see this little arrow over here. What I can do is I can clear the override. So I've overridden the first line, the indent, or I could redefine the style. Watch what happens when I redefine the style to paragraphs 2 and 3. You see how they've automatically accepted the changes from 2 and 3. So I can write a 500-page document. And if my publisher or somebody says, you know, this is taking a bit too much space on the page, I want you to bring your margins in. Let's do that again. Let's bring the margin in on that one. And let's bring the margins in on this one. Once again, I can go here and redefine from selection. Everything that was built using that style changes. So styles are super, super, super powerful when it comes to creating your document, because you know, if you're using Pages and you're using their styles, they're pretty, they're very pretty. But you can also modify the document just by making changes to the style or making changes to some of the text. Let's go back. This one was a heading style, so I'm going to put a new header in here. I just choose heading, and this is the body, and I'm going to copy this and paste them. Okay, once again the same. And I decided, you know, I don't want this one to be quite as big. I want to take this down to 16 point, and I want it to be italic. Watch what happens to this one when I update it. Now I don't have to go down and choose redefine the style. If I click update, it just updates all the styles because it assumes that that's really what you want to do in the first instance. So that's kind of your introduction to styles. Now, what if I wanted to create my own style? Let's go back to the tab document that I made over here. And if I copy this and I paste it into my document, but this time I don't say paste and match style, I just say paste. Have a look at the menu bar up here, the ruler. All of the tabs that I put inside there have been honored, right? It's brought them in from the original document. So if I want to define a style based on this, I can select it. And when you set a style, it's not just the font, it's not just the margins, it's everything that's in there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to add a new style. And I'm going to call this tabbed columns. Okay, and that's done. I now have a new style called tabbed columns. So let's just copy another couple of paragraphs so that we go onto a new page. So I'm now on another page over here. And now I want to put another couple of columns, just like this. All I have to do here is go to tabbed columns. You see what's happened to my ruler? So I can go and so on. You get the picture. And if I hit return, once again, so everything's laid out. I've defined the way I want it to look. But if I decide I need to make a change, and this is another thing about tabs that I want to show you, if ever we want to draw lines between two objects, you know, when you have a table of contents, you might have the name on the side and a page number on the other, or if you've got an invoice where you've got dotted lines going off to the price to make it easier for people to read. This is tab number 3, and I want a dotted line between these guys. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to go back to my layout. And can you see, every time I added a tab, it showed me where they were, and it's also telling me what they are. So the first two were left aligned, you can see that there. The second one, the third one was a decimal tab. But over here, we've got something called the leader. So if I select leader, I can put dashed lines, dotted lines, underlines, arrows. I'm going to choose, let's take dotted lines. Do you see how it's drawn those dotted lines between box of things and 299? Now I'm going to update this. Oh, and it didn't work. Let's just take this again. Tab columns. Give you a leader. Update. Okay, so it's applied it to this one. Let's just select all of them. It should have applied it to everything. I'm not quite sure why it's not. It's probably because I have some of the body copy. So this is another thing about tabs that we can do, is we can create a leader to it. If I drag this further out, the dotted lines just go along with it. So in terms of lining things up, it's very, very nice, very easy to do. Remember I said earlier that your styles are bound to your paragraph. There are a couple of exceptions. If I go to my style over here, we can have character styles. So if I want to define something where I want to highlight a word in a sentence without overriding the the body style, the paragraph style, I can go to my character styles and I can do, let's say, a strike through over there, or I can do a red bold. And by exactly the same token, if I take this word, excuse me, and I make it dark blue and I make it bold, I can add a character style, and I'll call this blue bold. Okay, done. And then I can select any other word in my document, choose that character style, and it just overrides that word. It doesn't override the entire paragraph. So once again, if I'm defining a style that I want to be all the way through my document, I don't have to remember, was it 11-point bold blue? Was it the right shade of blue? I just design the style, apply it, and I'm good to go. We can also define styles for our lists. If I show you a document that I've got open at the moment, this is the notes that I'm working off. There's a list style, which if we're doing lists and we hit tabs to indent, it changes. So this is an outline. It changes the leader of my bullet points. So if I wanted to go back to this document, this dummy document that I'm working on, and just have, say, a normal body style, I could say, okay, I want to use a note-taking list. And you see the indent over there. So this could be, say, the parent text. And if I hit return, it's exactly the same line, but if I hit tab, I now have a bullet point, bullet 1, bullet 2. If I hit indent, expand on this. And again, if I shift tab to go back out, so I can really, if I like working in outlines because it lets me just work on big topics and then expand them and open up, and it gives me the ability to work with my documents and to build my document in a non-linear way. I can just take my major topics and then expand on them, and if I run out of ideas, I can go back to something else and just keep on working. Now we can customize these as well. If you see over here, we've got text bullets, and there's a range of bullets we can select from. There are image bullets, and once again, there's a range of bullets that we can select from. And you can see how the document is changing all the time. But you can also customize it, and I quite like this. I'd have to do a lot of work with Keynote, and sometimes I want to remind myself to say something. So if I go to my iCloud Drive, I've got a document with a chat icon. I choose open. Can you see I now have a bullet point, which is a little speech bubble. So as I'm going through my presentation, that just reminds me to say something. Now I can actually create a style based on this, and I can call this chat icon. And now every time I want to call it up, this is something I have to say. I just go there, choose my chat icon, and now I have that bullet point over there. And if I decide to change the image because it's based on that style, it'll go all the way through. Okay, I have a couple more things. We're getting close to time. Another reason why you might want to use a style, let me open up another template. This is the document I worked on for those of you who attended the Doc Masterclass. And this is a bunch of list styles, but the style that draws that line across the top is a style called subject. Now, one of the things that you can do when you have defined a document using styles is if you need to build a table of contents, it can go through your entire document and it'll build a table of contents based on the style that you're using. So let me just click above here, and you'll see it says insert table of contents from my document. So I'm going to say yes, and it's going to tell me it's empty because I'm not using any paragraph styles. So I'm going to choose customize styles here, and that was the subject. I click on subject. You see, it's automatically basic settings, left side, right side of the doc, pages 2, 2, and 4. So if I go down to page 5 and hit return, and put in a new entry with subject, this should get added to the table of contents. If I go back to my top, there's my table of contents. And I can choose more than one style. I can have sub-styles. So if I've got major headings and then subheadings, it will do the major pages in a different font, and then it'll indent and have the subheadings. So if I've got 3 or 4 subheadings on a page or 2, it'll build that for me absolutely perfectly. So I hope I've taken you through a journey of something really quite boring and fundamental about showing invisible, showing the difference between a space and a tab, the different types of tabs that you might have in your margins, and then how you can take all of those together and build styles out of them, which you can reapply and then build your documents very easily. And equally as important, when it comes to modifying those documents, you don't have to go through a 500-page document. You just select any one of those parts of your document that's based on a style, modify it, and then tell it to update everything else, and you're done. So that's my story. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can come back and ask any questions, should you have any. Anybody have any questions?
Alan, it's Bernard here.
Hi, Bernard.
Yeah, thank you very much. Although one's worked with styles and so on, it's always good to pick up a few tips like that. It would be nice if you followed up with the difference between word processing and page layout. And with Apple, as you know, you can make little booklets. I've just tried to understand. I'm working on a book now, and when you use layout, you can't get text flow and things like that. So it'd be nice if you sort of covered the differences between using layout and word processing.
It's actually very simple. I don't really have to do an entire course on it. In a nutshell, when you're doing regular word processing, if you type and your type extends beyond the edge of the first page, it will build a new page automatically. When you have a page layout document and you want to have a new page, you have to physically add a new page. And it might have different styles. So that the way you get text to flow between the different styles is you make text boxes and you join the text boxes.
Oh, you
and
have
then
to
if you link them, and you can link them anywhere, so that if you add another paragraph on page 1, the text will flow into page 2 and subsequently over there. And that's the way most word. Sorry?
Where do you link the text boxes in the menu?
I haven't done it for ages. Literally, you're going to have to give me a chance. I can't do it off the top of my head. But it's literally a little handle on the top of the text box, and you select the text box it's going to join. It's pretty good to go.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? Raise a hand,
yes,
unmute yourself.
Alan?
Yes, Brian?
I have a need to copy a whole series of, the way I create them is by doing a screenshot, so they're PNG picture, but I want to put them in a Word document. If I can share my screen for a second, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
And because they're in, I bring them across as a ping, they're too big for the page. So I need to have a page that looks like this, because this is the size that fits into my machine. So they're 6,5 by 7,2. But when I bring them in, they are like huge, and I've got to pull them down to get each one to get to that size. How can I select them all and apply a size that's the same for each one?
Okay, Brian, I'd have to take that offline because I'm not a word fundy. Angelo would probably be able to answer it off the top of his head. The way I would go, though, I would take it slightly differently. I would change the size of the image before I brought it in, because what you're doing is
preview or something.
In preview, and in fact, you could use Automator or something like that to actually, if they're all roughly the same size, you could get it go through your whole folder and just do a batch change. Because if you're having to bring it down in size, you're filling your document up with very large images that don't need to be that large. And you're ending up with a document that's much larger than it needs to be in terms of
Yes.
storage, in terms of sharing it with everybody. So as long as the resolution, I'm assuming your ultimate output is print, as long as you've got
Yes.
something that's say 150 pixels per inch at the right size, because if you've got something that's really big and you bring it down, it could be 600, 700 pixels per inch, which is far greater than any printer can handle. Then you're literally crippling your document by making a document that's far too large. So more than happy to work with you on that one. There's a variety of ways of doing it. And if you want to learn how to do a batch version, just like we did shortcuts for iPad, you can do lots of automatic or automation on your Mac using a program called Automator, which comes with your Mac. And maybe we can do a session on that as well, if you guys like the shortcuts one.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. Michael, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. I did. I'm a bit embarrassed to ask it because I don't really work in this at all. But so styles is part of the WordPack program. Is that correct, or is this something?
It's part of any word processing program.
Oh, it's part of.
So if you're using Microsoft Word, you will find styles. If you're using Pages, you will find styles. And it's the ability to take a variety of settings, like font size, like font type, like margin settings, like tab settings, and save them into a single description, which you can apply anywhere in your document.
I understand. So this is not unique to Word. It can be used in Pages as well.
Pages, in what word processor do you use?
Right. Thank you. So, okay. No, 100%. Thanks, Alan. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Yeah, it's a little bit dry at the beginning, but one needs to understand how to look at these things. Otherwise, your document just, you press a button and your text goes onto a new line, and you don't know why it's on a new line. So, yeah, important stuff. I'm just looking through the chats. I don't see any more questions there other than people have to do practicing. And Michael, yeah, I've got your thing on Pages. So any more questions, folks? No? I will send out, I know it was a lot to take in. I will be, yes.
Hi, sorry, I did write in the chat box. Unfortunately, I'm having such issues with my internet, and so I initially wasn't able to get on, and I had to use my phone as a hotspot. So I missed a fair deal of the beginning slot. Are you able to do what you did last time and send us Spotify because we'd missed it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll get the link later today.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much.
Have to go through it. It's a pleasure. Sorry, I just saw Theodore there, and I didn't see a Theodore there, so I thought somebody was gone.
No, my name, it's Hill Theodore. You can does not say Hill on the screen. Yeah. Okay. Lovely.
It does. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks once again for attending. We'll be back on Wednesday with another one of these, and hope to see you there.
Thank you, Ellen. Thanks.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks, Alan. Great job.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.